Hey everyone, we're going to talk about a group of Native American soldiers during World War II in the Pacific Theater that were really essential to winning the war in the Pacific against the Japanese. They were called the Navajo Code Talkers, and they were Native Americans, as we said. So they're going to use their own language, the Navajo language, in order to develop codes to hide information about what the U.S. was doing in the Pacific, about the tactics they were using in the Pacific, in order to prevent the Japanese from intercepting that information or understanding it. So first of all, the Navajo was an unwritten language, and it's a very rare language. There's not a lot of Navajo people. So the Japanese had no knowledge of really who they were and what their language was. So say the U.S. wanted to use the word bomber and said, we need to request more bombers. The Navajo would use their word, J-Show. And there's no actual word in Navajo for bomber. What J-Show means is buzzard. So say the Japanese were able to figure out what J-Show meant, it would just mean buzzard. So J-Show was code for buzzard, would be translated to buzzard, and buzzard was code for bomber. So they would send messages for the United States in their squads and say, hey, we need some J-Shows over here. And that would translate to buzzard, and buzzard would be code for bomber. So it was a dual coded system that allowed America to keep the information about what they were doing in the war secret in case the Japanese were able to intercept these transmissions that were going around. So they were absolutely essential to protecting against Japanese counterattacks and so on, so on. So let's watch a quick video about these Navajo that goes a little more in depth.
Were considered the secret weapon of World War II, the Navajo Code Talkers, a small group of 400 Native Americans who spoke a language no one could crack.
To the Japanese, it was like speaking underwater, and it was impossible to encrypt by the Japanese themselves.
Staff Sergeant Ronaldo Jumbo holds this history close to his heart. The Code Talkers were his people, and his grandfather was one of them.
Artillery. Code word.
It was plain and simple with the Navajo Code Talkers themselves. They had one mission, that was one mission only.
In code, Private Whitehorse.
To send and receive messages secretly.
Marines called upon the Navajo after Pearl Harbor. You see, the Japanese had learned other Native American languages, but the Navajo tongue was so difficult to understand, it became the perfect weapon.
Our people, back at home, we grew up using pitchforks, using our hands, washing our clothes by hand.
This was totally foreign.
This is totally foreign to our people back then.
So, to familiarize themselves with Western war, the Code Talkers went through boot camp at MCRD and then basic training at Camp Elliott.
This is Camp Elliott. It's now called East Miramar, but the Marines still train here, just like they did 70 years ago.
The Code Talkers sent thousands of messages from 1942 to 1945 using phones like this one, warning troops about the enemy and relaying critical tactical details. Historians credit the Navajo for the victory at Iwo Jima and re-energizing Allied forces.
In my eyes, that changed the war.
Up 50! Fire for effect!
They were at the pivotal moment of when the U.S. needed our help. Regardless of the facts of what happened in our history, we still stood up for our country.
A country that is still using the skills of the Navajo during wartime.
We're proud of our heritage, and that's what we stand for. The Navajo Code Talkers themselves, set a really good example for those of us who are in the military as well.